Good morning and greetings to all people of goodwill who enter and find this video on all the social platforms. And we're trying to provide an objective information about the war and situation here in Lviv and in Ukraine. And I want to add that if you want to support our army and all of us to defend our homelands and our family, you can use the information on the description of this video. And I have a great pleasure to have a talk with a great professor and public intellectual, Yaroslav Hrytsak. He is the Ukrainian historian and also the doctor of the historical science and professor of Ukrainian Catholic University. Author of different books and science works in area, especially of the historical science transformation and the transformation of Europe and especially the transformation of Ukraine. It has to be added that the professor Yaroslav is a member of the supervisor board of Harvard Ukrainian Studies, honorary professor of National University of Kyiv Mohyla Academy. So, greetings.
Thank you, and pleasure is all mine.
And dear professor, we are going to the main point, why the Ukraine and Russia are not the same country. And could you describe main examples of this difference, especially in historical area?
I believe history is the best explanation here. Because what happens now in Ukraine and between Ukraine and Russia is not just a result of the recent conjuncture or recent conditions, but it has a long-term perspective. So to put it very simply, the main difference between Ukraine and Russia is not in language, is not even in the culture, because basically they are very close. The main difference between Ukraine and Russia is in political traditions, in the sense that Ukraine never had a record of a strong authoritarian state, and Ukraine, more often than not, had a very well-organized civil society. To put it differently bluntly, Putin is not possible in Ukraine, and the victorious Maidan is not possible in Russia. And this is the main difference, and we see this difference because whole Ukrainian country, whole Ukraine, is fighting with Putin, not just the state.
And what do you think all wars are supporting us, like 1,041 countries support resolution of OON Assembly of yesterday, and could it be the turning point of modern society also?
I believe this is turning point in the global history. We open a new page in the global history because it has some kind, how should I say, believe, as a naive belief, the history just already has finished. End of history. It has been proclaimed since the collapse of the Soviet Union. So the Cold War is over, and there will be no more wars, no more revolutions, and basically entering in the time of the well-being and the time which was very boring, that nothing would ever happen. And this was totally false predictions, because basically what we know from history, then the global history, it's a norm, it's a word that's a norm, and peace is rather exception. It's a authoritarian regime that rather a norm, a democracy is exception. It's a poverty that is a norm, and the affluent society is rather exception. It doesn't mean to say that this exception is not worth fighting for. No, it's exactly, they're even more fighting for because they're very fragile. So we have not to forget that evil is always there. It's not probably historians. It takes historian to tell it, but not just historian, probably theologian. And in my understanding, the best author who communicated was Albert Camus with his past. Because basically it says that virus of the past is always us. We should not overlook it. We should not ignore it, because one way or another, sooner or later, it will be back. And this is what we have right now.
And probably every Ukrainian know that Russia used total propaganda and brainwash its own people. And it's not the first case in history that the propaganda do its own work and do it efficiency. But maybe you have some examples in the history of these counter-propaganda steps or actions that we or all the colleagues in the world could use to affront it?
I could use examples, but I'm afraid these examples wouldn't work because it's useless. Because nowadays, Russian society is blocked, is totally blocked by by the state. Everything is censored. Yesterday or 2 days before, we witnessed the closing of the two last mass media, which is Dost and Echo Radio. They are now internet, but they are not this kind of the regular covering like they used to have. I don't really remember someone from the Russian liberals that says that you could not compare Russia or to judge Russia with this kind of the usual reasonable criteria. Because they don't apply to Russian society. Russian society is now a camp. It's not even a military camp. It's a concentration camp. You shouldn't expect that there will be some kind of freedom of information in the Gulag, so to say, because this is what they have now. So it's very hard, practically impossible to reach nowadays Russian citizens with any mass media. For sure, there is somebody who critical, who wants to protest, but they are few. They do few, and they don't change this my situation. It's probably very much like Nazi under Nazi Germany under Hitler, when they were at least claiming that they know nothing about the Holocaust, that this crime was not theirs. So my point is, the only way to convey these messages to Russian society will be only when Kremlin would collapse, when Putin would collapse. This would open the venue. But so far we don't have any chance but just to fight and to win for victory.
And maybe in this case, you could provide like some steps, efficient steps for us. What we could do like in this area, because I'm feeling and knowing from all my colleagues that the Russia is now spinning on also this propaganda through the academical circles all around the world, that they want peace and Ukraine has to stop the war by not defending themselves.
My knowledge may be limited, and probably it is. But from what I know, from what I read recently, there's not that many nowadays in the West who really follow and believe the Russian propaganda. This is the end, because what matters is not what's going offline, but what's going online. And online, this is war, and the war in the center of Europe. And this is what people make shrug with the fear, so to say. So what I'm saying that without a doubt we have to talk with the West, but I believe that the message now must be different. We don't have to persuade nowadays that Russia is aggressor. It makes no sense. It's evident. We have to share our messages for what we have to do first for the victory of Ukraine, and secondly for the future of Ukraine. And I would believe this what happened, what matters is so-called people diplomacy, in things that not just tell something to the elites, but if you have some friends, colleagues abroad, send them messages and make them spread these messages far away. But with clear message, this must be some clear message, like Ukraine has to be provided with a speedy accession to European Union, that Ukraine is supposed to be offered some kind of Marshall Plan, that Ukraine, all the kind of very simple messages. This would work. I do the same. I do all the time, and also I try to reach my Russian colleagues. But most of the Russian colleagues, either is now in prison or on immigration, so to say. Somehow they try to get it also to Russia so far, but I'm not sure it really doesn't work. But again, what I'm telling you is very much like there's a people diplomacy, that must be so-called, if I may say so, people journalism. That we have to talk, to send the messages on the person-to-person basis.
Yeah, thank you. And one of your topics is the social transformation in Ukraine. And could you compare the average Ukrainian in spring 2012 and in this period? And maybe you could also give an example how the values are changing.
There is a kind of rule, or say rule of thumb probably, in the human sciences and the social sciences, that the identity of society, the values of society are the most evident in the time of crisis. Because before the crisis, after the crisis, or without the crisis, we tend to believe very differently, and the society looks very heterogeneous. It used to is. It basically it is. But during the crisis, we tend to be mobilized, and we reveal our best qualities, so to say. So what I'm telling now, that what we have now in Ukraine, and I see it because I contact with the people, it's example, unbelievable solidarity, unprecedented solidarity. It doesn't really matter nowadays, east or west, south or north, Ukrainian or Russian speaking, young or older. They all are united by the fear of the war, and they be willing to end this war. And I would say that it reveals also that Ukrainian identity is very strong. It was all this kind of suspicion that probably Ukraine is not really a nation, all kind of things. So this talks nowadays make no sense, but also very evident, and this is what the values, that we have these values which were relevant under Maidan, and this is dignity and freedom. At that time, we had a kind of impression this is my value of minorities, active minority, the one who was the Maidan. Nowadays, the spirits, the values of the Maidan spread all over Ukraine. You have everywhere. And it's especially evident how people are welcoming refugees from all over the country. This is, as I say, this is dignity, freedom, solidarity. You have it in surveys, but people usually don't read surveys and don't believe the surveys. But nowadays, it's evident.
Yeah, I have to underline to all our viewers that in Ukrainian Catholic University we saw the same thing. Like all our students who remain here, now it's more than 200 people who are working on different like humanitarian help as volunteers. They are from all around the country. And also they are speaking different languages and helping each other. So like this transformation of the values is very hard.
If I may provide my personal experience, I don't have any personal friends, colleagues, whoever whom I know, who is nowadays either not refugee or helping these refugees. So this tells you something, and I believe I know a lot. The people in Ukraine. Yeah,
this is really true, and also from my point of view, it's something miraculous.
Nobody stays neutral.
Yeah, and you mentioned that we have to think about the future, and what is your point of view for the future of Ukraine, and maybe you have some personal messages for all Ukrainians and for all colleagues all around the world. What is the future?
So I would here quote Yuval Harari, the famous historian, with whom I don't quite agree on many points, but I agree on these points. He wrote in his recent article that what is on stake in Ukraine is not Ukraine itself. It's a future of the world. And it is not exaggeration, so to say. Because what would happen in Ukraine or around Ukraine would have strong effects, a very powerful effect on the world itself. Because basically, what is the stake is a kind of what was the model of the future development, whether it be authoritarian rule with a probably affluent economy, but so to say, which is very unstable. And this is an example of China, or probably Turkey or Russia. And this is the model the local elites promote very strongly, and they believe because this is decline of the West, and this is their time. They would propose a new model for the future of the world. And there is another model. It's an old model, but still working, and it has not to be abandoned. This is a model of the liberal democracy and free market, so to say. And I believe nowadays Ukraine is on the part of that formula. Actually, this is what irritates Putin, what makes him crazy. It's exactly the Ukraine didn't join the authoritarian club like Belarus, but it's an opposite side. So whoever win in this war, and I wish and I believe that Ukraine will win, would have effect on the future of the world, because I don't believe that model that's proposed by Russia or North Korea or China, whoever, has a future.
Mm-hmm. And at the ending, maybe you have some call to action to all the viewers that what they can do, how they can help in this proper period.
Do whatever you can to help Ukraine, particularly people who are suffering now, and this is humanitarian help. For to say, this is the thing. First things, the second thing, make pressure on government. Make them be brave and act more. How should I say? And make them more active, so to say, proactive, pro-Ukrainian. And again, as I said, Ukraine now must be embraced by the West, because nowadays Ukraine is the best West they could really imagine. It's not nowadays that we have to learn from West. It's now West has to learn from Ukraine, because as many intellectuals says that what is now Ukraine presents the best possible future, should say, for the West. So do whatever you can, but basically do whatever you can to make your government to embrace Ukraine as a part of European Union and possibly as a member of the NATO.
I'm very grateful for your time,
Thank you
Professor.
for the doing.
Yeah, and I want to encourage all our viewers to help us, to help defend our homelands and families, and please also pray for us. And we are praying for your encouragement and bravely help. So thank you very much.